So welcome everybody to the latest instalment of Browne Jacobson's Leadership Podcast. My name is Nick Solomon and I'm a Senior Associate in the Financial Services Litigation Team in the London office. I'm joined by Chris Roebuck, who's a visiting Professor of Transformational Leadership at Cass Business School in London, and through his consultancy business advises major global organisations on improving their performance through their people and culture. So welcome again, Chris. It's a real pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
I'm certainly very interested, but I think our listeners would be interested to hear a bit about your broad and varied experience that we've heard of in relation to going into organisations for the purposes of identifying leaders, I suppose, internally and externally, and some of the challenges you faced during that process.
Yeah, I think the way to look at it is to sort of get a perspective on what is successful leadership or where it's likely to be. And then when you know what that is, then you can look for people that are exhibiting those behaviours. First of all, I think it's worth saying that my leadership journey, as you mentioned, has encompassed an awful lot of different things. And in fact, one of the things that I also did was I also spent 5 years in the British Army. So I've been through Sandhurst and see how the military approaches leadership, commercial sector approaches leadership, public sector approaches leadership. And what is really interesting is that everybody in whatever sector they're in makes the assumption that they are special and that leadership in their sector is different from leadership in other sectors. Having been on that leadership journey that I've been on, it's actually become apparent to me that in terms of successful leadership, between organisations and sectors and cultures, commonality of what we need to do to get the best from people and focus that onto success is actually significantly greater than the differences. Now, I would say, irrespective of what organisation you're in or what level you're at, if you want to meet those two fundamental requirements of what a leader has to do, get the best from your people and focus that onto what delivers success, it's probably pretty much 90% the same as it is with any other leader in any other organisation. And I think when we get that into our heads, that then helps us, because then we're saying, okay, if it is that similar, what are those things that leaders do that actually enable that to happen? Then can we spot people who are doing it? One of the really interesting things that confirms what I've just said is that 6 or 7 years ago, I was wondering, are there things that all leaders do that make them successful? And I started asking groups of leaders around the world, think about the best boss that you have ever had in your career. And what did that person do on a day-to-day basis that made them so truly special for you, made you give 110%, and got you to the point that you genuinely cared what the outcome was? And when I started doing this, I was under the impression that we'd probably get different things from different people, but it soon became very apparent that when I asked that question and I flip charted what the people were giving me, some consistent themes came up, to the degree that 6-7 years later, I am still asking that same question, and I know what any audience is going to say, because there is a list of things that every single audience tells me about in terms of what their best boss did, to the degree that I let them give me their list. And I actually have a slide with my list on, and when they've finished, I show them my list, and it's completely the same as their list, because I know it's going to be. And everyone's saying, well, hang on, what is this magical list? And it's really interesting that this sort of magical list that delivers super performance for anybody contains some really, really simple things that make a difference to our day-to-day work existence. Like, this person doesn't interfere and allows me to get on with the job. This person asks me for my ideas. This person develops my career. This person asks me for my ideas. This person tells me how I fit into the big picture. This person builds trust with me. This person acts with integrity, leads by example. This person, above all, this person shows they care about me. And what is interesting is that list is totally consistent. It doesn't matter whether you're with the Chinese space program in Beijing, an investment bank in New York, or the Red Cross in Myanmar, or HR directors in Italy. And on Thursday, I'm going to be speaking to 50 finance directors in central London, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing, and I know their list will be the same. So it's that list that we're looking for in terms of people's behaviour. Now, you then say, okay, well, if we look at it from the perspective of are people doing this naturally, or are people needing to be developed in this, you can actually take both arguments as valid. So within any population, at any level, and I don't think that this is level specific, it's experience related, in that when you suddenly discover that these things work, you just do more of them and the more experience you have. So you could say there are probably 10 to 15% of people who naturally get this, because it links into an element of personality. It links in, it's actually powered by neuroscience, quite simply, that we have set up in our brains a mechanism that is pretty much primarily subconsciously driven, whereby if somebody does something positive from our perspective, then we have a tendency to respond positively to that. And that is the effect that doing those simple things has with people. And it triggers, to some degree, it triggers a chemical response in the brain powered by dopamine, where your boss says something that you think is really good and shows they care about you, and you therefore respond. So that's how it works physically. So we have a group of 10 to 15% who get that naturally because they've spotted that it works. The bigger question is, what about everybody else? What about all the other leaders? Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is that actually the other 85% of leaders, when you ask them the same question, come out with the same answers. So they know as well what they have to do. And what is interesting in terms of getting success in organisations then is if you make people aware that actually it's not just about the strategy, that's important, but fundamentally it's about these simple day-to-day actions that get the best from people. And when an individual or a team become aware of how powerful these simple things are and start using them effectively, then it makes a real difference. You pose the question, so how powerful are they? The statistics would suggest that, for example, a boss who takes time to ask people how they're feeling and talks to them about how what they do contributes to the big picture can get somewhere around 35% more effort versus a boss who can't be bothered. A boss who shows that they genuinely care about their people can get 25% more effort than a boss who can't be bothered. Now, that's looking at it from the team perspective. If you then multiply that up across an organisation, you're in a position where you could be getting 30% more effort from 60% of people. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a law firm, a construction company, an investment bank, or an airline. If you're getting 30% more effort from 60% of people, the suggestion from looking at the figures and other examples is if you're in the commercial sector, you're going to be getting 10 to 15% on your bottom line. And don't forget that actually the things that I'm talking about don't actually cost any money to do. They don't actually take any time additionally to do, and everybody knows about them already. In terms of the leaders, the really good leaders of the future, many of them will be picking up on these things naturally. Then the next stage is, as I said, once you're getting the best from people, how do you focus that on what delivers success for the team and the organisation? Now that's again where it gets interesting, because there are a set of behaviours that predict and indicate that people might be good leaders at the next level up or the level after that. And many corporate organisations will look for these behaviours. And the behaviours, for people listening, this isn't just about you assessing your people to see if they are exhibiting these behaviours, because you can actually, if you want to, develop these behaviours yourself and enhance your own ability to potentially A, perform better, particularly as a leader, and B, be identified as such. But I would also say for anyone that isn't even a leader, developing these sort of skills or this sort of understanding is important. So what are these things? Well, most important is the ability to get things done through other people. The ability to establish a rapport, linking into what I said before about getting the best from people and acting in a way that shows you care about them, you're creating a we not me culture, works for employees and staff members just as much as it does for leaders. Then it's about, do you have the ability to learn from the events you see happening around you? Do you have the ability to learn from experience? Do you reflect on what's happened? Also, do you take the opportunity to help other people learn as well? So that's about learning. Then it's also about the ability to look at change and manage change as an opportunity, not a threat. So that you are all the time looking at what's happening and looking at whether there could be a better way of doing it, be it an incremental small improvement or be it some form of disruptive, complete technological or other change. The other one is what is called resilience, and that's your ability to deal with the stress that you might be experiencing. And that interestingly then brings in the whole element of the holistic person. So in order to do that, that isn't just about working. That's about your ability to manage yourself as an individual, to get enough sleep, to keep fit, to eat right, and to dedicate time for you as an individual to also enable you to work better. Because all the evidence is quite clearly that if you work too much over a certain number of hours a week, one, your ability to make decisions goes downhill very fast. Two, the quality of the work you're delivering goes downhill very fast. Three, you tend not to be a particularly cooperative colleague. And four, it can lead to all sorts of things. And certainly people in the financial services or professional world say, well, that's not really true. If it's not really true, why are limits placed on the hours of airline pilots, lorry drivers and other people who are doing critical jobs? Because there is a proven physiological decline in performance after about 50 hours a week. So if you then take that forward, those characteristics people are exhibiting. They are potential leaders, but then it's very much about leaders also developing other leaders and how within an organisation everyone can help everyone else get better. Now in terms of what would I say to people to help them move forward in their careers or identify leaders? You'll recall earlier I said that the two critical things a leader has to do are one, get the best from their people, two, focus that onto what delivers success by understanding the big picture. And that second phase is absolutely critical. Understanding the big picture allows you to ensure that what you are doing at operational level supports strategic objectives. Because in many organisations there is evidence to suggest that 25% of what's happening at operational level isn't actually directly adding value to strategic objectives. And that's because leaders have failed to communicate the big picture down the line. But there is one other critical element, particularly for leaders, that I haven't mentioned. In order to be able to get the best from people, you have to be able to spend some time interacting with your people. The problem is that if the task you are doing is not under control, you are constantly firefighting, trying to regain control, and not focusing on the people, but focusing on the task. One of the reasons for that is, and this doesn't apply to any sector, it applies to anybody who has any responsibility for people in terms of leadership. What I have discovered over the last 2 to 3 years is that by asking leaders, a significant majority of leaders in organisations do not have the basic skills they require to be able to manage tasks effectively. That's not through any fault of their own, it's primarily because organisations can't be bothered. What they'll do is they'll spend lots of time training people on customer relationships, they'll have briefings about strategy, but they won't actually give leaders the skills to do the job effectively. What am I talking about? I'm talking about, one, the ability to prioritise tasks. Which tasks are important and which tasks in particular contribute to the achievement of strategic objectives. 2, in addition to that, time management. Once I have decided which task I am going to do, am I capable of having a timeline and schedule within which I can effectively get the task done? 3, delegation. Do I have sufficient skills to be able to delegate tasks in a way that optimizes performance? 3, communication. Once I have decided to delegate tasks, am I able to explain to an individual or the team the way that I would like the task executed and give them sufficient freedom to be able to do their part of it without me interfering? And then finally, feedback. Am I sufficiently skilled to be able to give good, constructive, at the time feedback on their performance? Now, the problem is that those basic skills that I describe as a firm foundation are lacking in well over 50 to 60% of leaders in most organisations. So it's effectively like allowing people on the road to drive without giving them any driving lessons or an instruction book for the car, and being surprised when we have accidents. So what I would say to people that are listening is very much have a think about what I've just said. And if there is a way that you can, if you're particularly a junior leader, if you can persuade your organisation to make sure that you have those basic skills in place, or if not, you have the opportunity on the internet or via some other means to get an understanding of how to do these things yourself, your life will be significantly easier. Now, people are then saying, well, why is this so important? I'll just give you an indication. For example, what happens at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst for the first few months is not teaching people leadership. It is teaching people the things I have just spoken about, so that they are absolutely slick at managing any task in any situation under any pressure. Because it's only when you are confident in your ability to control the task that you then have the ability to spend time focusing on your people. And what happens in most organisations is because people can't manage the task effectively, they ignore the people whilst they're trying to recover control, and the people then say, this boss is more interested in the task than they are in me.
That's probably quite a neat place to wrap up today's episode of the Leadership Podcast. So, Chris, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
It's very much appreciated. And we're certainly looking forward here at Browne Jacobson to the next episode. So thanks very much for listening.